Hello, and welcome back to Specimen the Sociologist. My name is Justman Reichman, and I tend to tell people that it rhymes with specimen, but with a J. My love for people has now grown into this podcast, where I blend social theories and storytelling to offer listeners a fresh perspective on their lived experience. The goal of this platform is to explore the science behind our social lives and understand how science can help stabilize our social interactions. As tradition goes, let's kick off today's episode with an artist spotlight. This is a chance to highlight independent artists who hone their craft and are ready to share their gift with the world. I stumbled upon this amazing person by chance at the photo album release party, and that is where the story begins. Early in the year, a friend invited me to her mutual friend's photo album release party. I threw on my thrifted blazer, grabbed some heels from Nordstrom Rack, and hopped into my car, excited to be in a new space and make new connections in a celebratory environment. Throughout the evening, I not only met Kyla, who would soon become a great friend, but also received a warm welcome from her community. And let me tell you, there's no better way to learn about someone's character than through how others speak about them publicly. Since then, we've built a friendship that has included everything from bumping into one another at a Kaytranada concert to trying a cozy ma and pop spot in Japantown and even enjoying her homemade span musubi. Kyla is an eclectic artist who constantly pushes the boundaries of self-expression and branding. Raised in Kailua, Hawaii, her upbringing, rooted in community and fellowship, has given her the ability not only to bring other people's dreams to life, but also to connect partners in creative ways. Kyla has historically worked with organizations such as Amazon, KEXP, and Harvest House. So if you're in need of a brand strategist, photographer, or creative director, make sure to reach out to kylamaeo and give her a big old hug from me. You'll find her business handle in today's episode description. Now, let's dive into today's episode titled N-95. And if you're curious, yes, this is titled after the mask N-95 because we'll be discussing Erving Goffman's dramaturgical theory and how we as individuals assume curated roles to navigate our social interactions. My hope is that by the end of this episode, you'll be inspired to step outside of the roles that life circumstances may have shaped for you and remove the quote unquote mask that hides your most authentic self. In 1959, sociologist Erving Goffman introduced his ideas on dramaturgy and the presentation of self in everyday life. According to Goffman's dramaturgical theory, people adopt roles they use in their daily interactions. These roles are not only a public portrayal of a character, but they represent parts that we play in reality, whether it's being a brother, an aunt, a friend, or even a student. These roles help us create specific impressions, much like actors presenting characters to an audience. Goffman uses the theater metaphor, calling public presentations the quote unquote front stage. The preparation for these roles happens backstage, which is more private. Backstage moments might involve rehearsing dialogue, adjusting your appearance, and other elements to create a desired impression. This is known as impression management, the process of shaping how others view us. Again, impression management happens whether we consciously or unconsciously choose the information that we share. Goffman argues that interactions between two or more people always involve this form of management, as we attempt to convince others to accept a specific definition of the social situation or ourselves. Goffman's theory also shows that people use impression management to uphold or challenge societal norms. So the people who decide to be alternative for alternative's sake. But anywho, sometimes individuals will intentionally adopt symbols or behaviors to represent that rebellion, creating the impression that they are resisting societal expectations, even though they may just be assuming a similar role. Now, I threw a lot at you, so let's just pause here because we can totally go deeper into Goffman's theory, but for now, we're going to keep things at the 100 level. So let's go back to just focusing on the two key concepts, front stage and backstage. As a reminder, the front stage itself refers to the persona that we show the world. This could be the content that we post on social media, how we interact with our in laws for the first time, or how we behave in a corporate environment. Now, the backstage is where we feel at ease, unobserved, and free from performing for others. It's where we can relax without putting on a mask. Examples of this could be chatting with an old friend over a pint of beer, perhaps having pillow talk with your partner, or even attending a therapy session. Goffman suggests that we engage in dramaturgical performance each and every day. And if we accept that life has both its front and back stages, we realize that we're all playing a role that creates an impression, either one that allows us to belong in a social environment or to craft a very specific public image. Let me bring this down to earth a little bit and share a quick story about how I have found myself navigating both the front stage and the back stages of life. It was summer of 2021, and I had just graduated with my master's degree in criminology and justice. During this time, I was transitioning from New Orleans, Louisiana, back to Seattle, Washington. And if I can be completely honest, I was exhausted. I had been juggling a full-time job, a full-time grad program, and I had a socially active life. I volunteered, mentored a cohort of undergraduates, and even had a wide network of friends. This lifestyle slowly turned into a social dilemma as it wore on my sense of self. You can only bop around so many places before personality can slowly become diluted. And if you don't believe me, go back and listen to my most recent podcast called Social Inebriation, and you can gain another perspective on that statement. It takes a great amount of energy to be in relationship with large quantities of people. This can be due to the emotional labor, stewarding conflict, and even navigating various social dynamics. And as I returned home, I knew that I wanted to slow my pace with social engagements, and I made the decision to temporarily deactivate my Instagram account for a year. And in one moment, the accumulation of all of my relationships for the past years went completely blank, and I never experienced more peace in my entire life. Because keep in mind that social media does play a huge part in Goffman's theory of how we want to steward people's perceptions of us. That we are not only putting the best content forward, but that's also how we perceive other people. And so if we build our sense of self only off of highlight reels or only off of limited or partial exposure that social media can offer, because again, social media is great for building community, but it can't compensate for community. And so I felt that the first step in purifying who I truly was at my core outside of posting or being seen or other people's perceptions, it was to completely remove myself. Because don't forget what Goffman said about the front stage and the backstage personas. The front stage is the mask we wear to present ourselves to the world, while the backstage is where we drop the act. And it wasn't until I was back in Seattle, far from my old social circle, that I realized the performance eventually had to end. Goffman argues that we assume roles consciously and subconsciously to navigate life. It wasn't until I had space away from New Orleans and those relationships that I could see the roles that I either assumed or had been assigned. During this time, I intentionally limited my social interactions to regain clarity on who I truly was. And for a good season in life, the only way you can contact me was one, through writing me a handwritten letter, two, calling my phone, or showing up to my family house. And as I rediscovered myself outside of external influences, I began to live a much more authentic life. During that time period, I made new connections in the city. I had challenging but purposeful conversations with loved ones, and I even started taking bachata classes. Because the key to managing your self perception is realizing that there is no fixed version of you. If you focus too much on managing others' impressions, you'll never arrive at the conclusion that they are merely fickle. And now that leads me to the final segment where I can talk to you a little bit about ways to cultivate a healthy self perception. Takeaway number one is remember that this is your first time showing up in life. My former high school AP human geography teacher once told me that you only have this space and time once with these people. And while she was suggesting that we as students remain present in our everyday lives, she subconsciously hinted towards the value of our distinct identities. That I come to the conclusion that there is only one Justman who has been in all the exact spaces, who has experienced all the same emotions, and whose narrative is unlike anyone else and surely cannot be masked. Which leads me to takeaway number two. It's unstable to build your identity on others' opinions. Goffman talks about impression management, how we shape the way that others see us. But with social media, large gatherings, and various social environments, you are never going to get the same reaction from the same person. For example, one person may think you're dancing too much at the club, while another person may think you're not dancing enough. One person may see your tone as ghetto, while another may understand it as your cultural dialect. If you base your self-image on others, not only will you be double-minded in your ways, but you'll be constantly conflicted. Now, the third and final takeaway is this. The theatrical mask you wear will never stay on forever. Eventually, your front stage persona will catch up with your backstage self. And this is not a scary thing. Remember when I returned to Seattle and I saw myself outside of my previous social environments? It may take time to redefine yourself, especially in a familiar environment. So trust me, you have yet to meet the greatest version of yourself. Anywho, Huddle, that is it for today's Power Pod. It's more on the short side as it is the holiday season, and I'm trying to be as present as possible in my relationships. But nonetheless, hopefully you got a lot of good little nuggets from this episode. And as a cheeky preview, the next principle in the pod that comes out this upcoming Thursday will be on discernment. That while, yes, it is important to be your most authentic self and not to juggle a multitude of masks as a means of managing relationships, it's important to know what information to share with what person based on how they're going to steward that and ultimately steward you. And so I think that's about it. Make sure to check out today's artist spotlight, my girl Kyla, and ways to support this podcast in this episode's description. And until next time, have a powerful day.